get traps. I felt like we couldn't really get with the tools that are out there. So Cosmo over here, he's a little inventor. I don't know if you guys have seen those sandbells around and the hypervest. He's the inventor of those. I snagged him. He's an old friend from high school, and I was like, hey, I've got this idea. Tell me how we can make this work, because my CrossFitters especially, and then a lot of my general population can't do some of this stuff at home. The tools aren't out there. So we came up with this, it's called Mobo System. And the reason we kind of thought about this, and there's a lot of ways that this can be presented to you, but I'm going to present the whole thing to you today, because one time I was with Jess and Karen. We went to October Obliteration. What was that, in Dallas maybe? Houston. And a few years ago, and I saw this guy walking in front of me, and he had a giant duffel bag on his back full of like the stick and the balls and the saw and down. And then he had a PVC, a foam roller, and a mat. And he was walking in like this, and I was like, oh my God, like there has got to be a way that you are not having to carry all this shit around, you know? Like, it was crazy. And then he's on the ground, and it was asphalt there, by the way, and so they're doing like butt mobilizations on the asphalt with the lacrosse ball in their butt, and I was just like, this is just making me crazy. And so we were kind of like, how could we just put all of that into one thing, make it like a Swiss Army knife, you know? You've got your screwdriver, you got your tweezers, you got your toothpick, you got your knives. And so we kind of wanted something that you could basically carry with you, put together, but you didn't have to carry 64 things to make that happen. So it kind of had you guys in mind when we were like, how could we at least allow them to go to their competitions and not have to carry a bunch of stuff? So that's kind of why it looks like this. In general, it's got a carrying case. You can buy a variety of stretch straps. If you like the small ones, there's 1 inch. You can get some different diameters, or you can get the stretch strap, the one that's the nylon. But basically, it is your handle. It's your carrying case, but then you can also take it off, use it for IT, glutes, shoulder, wherever you are, and it comes with the carabiners, so if you've got a way out there, they have these kind of like posts and stuff, so you can kind of hook it around if you want. But basically, it comes in this package, and this piece right here itself is just a foam roll. So there's some people who the PVC might be too hard, or if you're just prepping tissue. My thing as a medical person is always kind of like, you don't want to just like hit it hard. You kind of prep it, you sweet talk it a little bit, you get some blood flow moving, it's not super painful yet, and then you start targeting, the zones you need to target. So if you basically take off the stretch strap and say I'm using it for my shoulder or whatever, I've done my little thing, then I could come to this, and this could be my foam roll. I'm doing my quad, maybe my IT, maybe my whatever, T-spine. This is how you would do it, right? You're here, you got this thing right behind you. Make sure you're locking out that head, and you're just asking yourself to go opposite how you just spent all day for the most part. Or if you drove to an event or something like that, you just were in the car, slumpy sitting. So you get on this guy, you want it to create a fulcrum, which means you want it to push right at the vertebral segment. You'll know it feels stiff and sticky, but make sure that your head is not doing this thing. This is a big problem for the neck, so just lock it out. Just put him comfortably in your hands, and then now I'm kind of like, oh God. So right there is my like, okay, that's it. Technically, your head is supposed to be able to almost touch the ground. That's not even close for me. I spent all day yesterday working on you guys and pecs and stuff, so I'm like slumped over a table working on you. So this is something that I have to work on pretty regularly. And all I'm doing is hanging out. Now you can also get up here and do a little rocking and rolling, whatever you want, but if you're using any kind of foam roll, I don't care if it's the rumble roller or the trigger point or whatever, but this is a great way to start with the T-spine, which is what we were talking about, that right area right between your shoulder blades. Lock out that neck, get that guy moving in the opposite direction. Number one, so it's moving. The spine has to be able to move in its small little angles in order for you to do what you want to do. Secondly, the shoulder. The shoulder's last 30 degrees of movement basically come from your spine, not your shoulder at all. So if my spine is here, that's it for me. If my spine is here, that's it. Big difference when you're talking about an overhead lift. So, starting with that T-spine. Then we thought, if you need to. So this basically is a little bit squishy. It'll feel like a typical foam roll or one of the trigger points with a little bit of that dense foam. Makes it soft. If you want to prep with that, you can. Once you get into this, the unit actually is inside it, so it's just kind of housed in there. And then if you take the bag off, there's a mat in here, so if you are somewhere, stickers, ants. We've been to 2 events where I was like, oh my God, like I didn't want to, you know, we had to take like 3 towels, and so anyway, a place that you could mobilize if you need to. Or this, once it comes off, creates a change in density for you. So if that's too soft, but the PVC is too hard, anywhere in the middle could be something that you use. Also, like I work with the Austin Aztecs, the little pro soccer team in town, they all take their shirts off at the end when we're doing mobilizations, and they slip slide on the PVC. So we keep this rolled slightly so that they're not all over the place if they're sweaty on it. And so again, you can do your T-spine here, you can do your IT band, you can do your quad, you can take it and then just use your PVC, get on here, do your stuff. So anyway, it was just something, and again, this is just an accessory for it. If you want it to be in the entire carrying case, we just created it so people didn't have to carry that big wad of stuff to their events. So if you get to the juicy parts, this, if it doesn't remind you of a stick, you guys have seen that one with the little thing, but it just has those little plastic. It's just, there's not enough density to it to like get into the meaty muscle, especially if you've got big muscles, right? And you guys have most of the time have big muscles. So so we were thinking of a way, how can you create that same concept where you can roll something, but you could change the texture if you want. So if you want it to be a little bit more rigid, then you have that option. I personally don't like that. So I like, you know, a little bit less of bumpy. I like it smooth, so I don't want that bumpy feel on my muscles, but everybody's a little bit different. And in the grand scheme of this, it comes with two of these which are raised, and then 2 that are just flat, like a lacrosse ball would be. I did not bring that prototype today because we've been playing with kind of how do we like the densities of these, so just imagine that it comes with 3 different, you know, densities of bands that if you want it. So anyway, you can use it for a stick, again, prep work for a tissue, or if you're just kind of quickly having to do something, you've got an area that feels a little sticky or tight, you can use the entire roll for that. But what I really came here to talk to you about is how do you use this for pecs and traps and hip flexor and glutes, because that is the area that you need to manage most, and it's also the thing that's kind of missing out there. It's really hard to get to those places with a lacrosse ball specifically right now. So you can take these knobbies off. Again, these could be used for the bottom of the foot if you want, and I'll show you how they're used a little bit later. But basically, like a Swiss Army knife, this thing comes apart now, and you can do all kinds of different things with it. If I want to use the 2-ball, you guys have a little peanut, right, that you tape the 2 balls together. Well, in my clinic, you're not allowed to do that because it can't get cleaned. So, so for sanitary reasons, or even here, if you have 45 different people using a peanut, anyway, you know, exactly. Easier to clean, but boom, I just put this together. I created my own little peanut, and if you like it rigid, great. If I like it another way, great. I just pick the balls that I want. And this goes in the middle of the T-spine also. This could go at the base of the neck, especially the smoother one. This can go in your calf. Love this duo in the glute. If you haven't tried to use a 2-ball system in your glute or hamstring, you definitely want to try it, because it splits the muscle bellies, right? And there's a big sciatic nerve that travels through there that if you get a single ball right in it, sometimes zingy, tingly, weird, this kind of separates that so that you can avoid any kind of nerve irritation. So that's something I was getting a lot of feedback on. So if you try the 2-ball in there, and again, you can basically just switch this up however you want. So just conceptually, and you can play with this a little bit later if you want, but conceptually you can create this system. The one I really love is if I want to kind of target my pecs, big one first, right? Big one. Ingrid, was it you that was doing this, or you were just doing it yourself? Yeah. So you put these knobbies on the end, right? So now there's a way that you can kind of get in there, Ingrid would push herself. We designed it basically, though, to either be a partner series, I can have a partner with me, or I'm against just something, anything. I put myself here, I can lean against it now with whatever pressure I want. I have plenty of room, I can move my arm, I can mob, I can release, I can create however much pressure I want without me kissing the ground or kissing this wall to make that happen. Or if you use the trigger point block, it's out here, but you still have the ball that you're trying to manage, and typically it falls, and so this is just a nice way to create that leverage that you need to get into the biggest muscle belly that we have a major problem with, pecs. So nice and easy. You can also switch it, change it up. You can get a little further outside. You can get right up against the sternum, wherever you have problems with this. Again, if you need a partner, say you're out somewhere and you don't have that, then two of us can get together. There's plenty of room, and we still get to move, and we create leverage for each other. So it's just a little bit of a better option than doing that. I want to get into the hip flexor. Right? Then I can also, again, I've got space. I can do cross friction on myself. Just taking this little end of this wand and just wrecking my quad that comes up. You get just inside the pelvis and some of that hip flexor region. This is a big area, though, that you kind of want to be specific about. There's a big femoral triangle that's in there. That's a gigantic nerve and vascular bundle deep in this groin region. So if you have a ball and you're kind of like trying to figure it out, but you don't have a lot of precision with it, then you kind of can get into some trouble. So I like the concept of this where I can tell myself how much pressure, I can put it where I want that to be, and I can avoid any of those big nerve bundle issues that might happen here. Same thing if I want to turn around now, TFL and IT band. I mean, you guys, no doubt, have issues here and this big muscle belly right here. Before I even get into the glutes, right? I can take this thing and I just get right up on that ridge and rock and roll right here. Again, I'm just leaning into it. I can really point specific and get right on the edge of this bone where all those come together. Or you can actually make this the short one, so it's just a handhold, and then you can get in there if you want it to be a little bit more precise. And then last thing, traps. And this again is something for sure you and I've talked a lot about with Jess. When these guys get really monster, this is also where everybody holds their tension, right? Everybody, if you go get a massage, what's the first thing they do? Take their thumbs and rub the traps. Traps are a big problem, especially in your sport with the amount of pull-ups you guys are doing and overhead lifts. You can get into your traps. So I saw one of the videos, I guess Kelly Stark did this. He had somebody stand on a box with a super band, put a lacrosse ball there, step on the box, the lacrosse ball is here, and you have to step up, and then it pushes down. I was like, oh my God. First of all, that took like 30 minutes to set up. Secondly, 9 out of 10 people are going to hurt themselves even trying to get in a squat to get a ball here. Or the one here, we have a ball, and you're trying to do it here in this weird place. So we were like, how could we make that happen? So we just take this wand and say I'm just kind of on the ground, I put it up against something hard, and then I put it in my trap, and then I push into it. So I can kind of just move my head, move my neck, move my arm, and pin that monster. Just like in the clinic, what I would do is I'd put my thumb in there and do all those same things. I'd make you move your head, move your arm. If you guys have had ART, you know they basically pin something and then you have to move it, so the tissue has to kind of get translated through this friction, really, or through this pressure, so that you can truly change the fascia and get rid of whatever knots or trigger points, or whatever you want to call them, that are occurring. So in this position, it's easy to just kind of generate some force yourself, push into this, get in that trap, and move it any way you want. Also, another thing that I like is if I place this at an angle down into, again, my pecs, which is a big problem, you can kind of tackle this from a different perspective, down into that big meaty muscle belly, and then again, I'm moving and pinning that tissue and doing either a head or a neck or a shoulder mobilization while you're pinning the tissue. So we kind of were just trying to think of how could we get you guys to get into those areas a little bit better, especially the true problem areas, pecs, glutes,